Hey guys, it's Kira, and if you haven't guessed from the title, it's time for another 24-hour readathon, which I am personally so excited for. I love 24-hour readathons because I feel like they always just challenge me to read way more than I normally would, which is great, and they're just a really fun way to sort of read a lot in a small period, and it just feels like a fun challenge. And I also just love filming them and putting these videos together. So basically, if you can't tell, I'm super excited for this 24-hour readathon, especially because I'm not just doing this one on my own. I've also joined up with Em from alittlewriterem, and we've decided that seeing as we're getting towards the end of the year and lots of people have sort of end of year reading goals, especially for me because I'm currently 10 books away from my Goodreads reading goal for this year. I've read 65 books so far and I'm determined to get to 75. So we've decided to basically come up with this smash your TBR 24-hour readathon, and we're all just going to basically try and read as much as possible over the next 24 hours and also do some fun festive things as well, because clearly, judging by the tree behind me, it's nearly Christmas. So yeah, I'm super excited because this is not only going to be a fun day of lots of reading, but also just a really nice festive day as well. So it is currently the 6th of December, Friday evening, and we're going to be starting the readathon at 8 p.m, which is in about half an hour's time, and then going all the way up to 8 p.m. tomorrow on Saturday the 7th of December. But I'm super excited, and yeah, I've picked out some books that I'm really looking forward to reading, and the first one I'm going to be picking up is one that has been recommended to me by Em, and that is How Do You Like Me Now by Holly Bourne. Now, I don't know much about this book, which is exciting because I feel like it's fun to sort of go into some books not knowing much other than the fact that people have given it good reviews, but we kind of decided to give this readathon a bit of a Holly Bourne theme just because I've been meaning to pick up her books for a while now, and Em loves her, so I'm going to be picking them up for the first time, and Em is going to be rereading a couple of them, and then we've also got some non-Holly Bourne books in there as well, but this is the one that I'm going to be starting with, and I'm super looking forward to getting into it. But for now, we've still got about half an hour to go, so I'm probably just going to chill out for a little while and maybe get myself a hot drink, and then I'll get started at 8 o'clock. So it's now just after 9 o'clock and I'm about 104 pages, well not about, I am 104 pages into How Do You Like Me Now, and so far I'm really enjoying the book, but oh my god, was that a difficult reading experience, because as soon as I sat down on the sofa to start reading, I just started drifting off, and I don't even know what happened because I didn't think I was that tired before I started reading, but as soon as I sat down to read, it's like I couldn't do anything but fall asleep, and Jay just kept prodding me every couple of minutes to wake me up again. So basically that took me a lot longer than I had anticipated, but I am enjoying the book, and basically it seems to be about this woman called Tori who is a very successful author, and she seems to have, to like her fans, a really sort of perfect life, but then it's kind of like a things aren't quite as they seem type narrative, and in reality she's not actually as happy or like fulfilled with her life or relationship as it seems. And the irony is that she's like a self-help author, but she doesn't seem to be taking her own advice. So that's kind of where we are at the moment, and I am enjoying this book. I'm not sure how much more I'm going to read before I go to sleep because, you know, clearly I'm just like struggling, but I am enjoying this book. And one of the things I think that's making me struggle is the fact that it has very inconsistent chapter sizes, which isn't a massive problem, but usually when I'm feeling super tired I can motivate myself by just like getting to the next chapter, whereas the chapters in this book are really long, so it's taking me a lot more motivation to get through it. But yeah, I'm enjoying it, so I'm about to go downstairs and make myself a hot chocolate with some vegan whipped cream so that I can hopefully wake myself up a little bit and then get some more reading done. Oh, that was hot. Yum. So it's now just about 10:30 and I'm feeling a lot more energetic, which is great. I think it turns out that hot chocolate is exactly what I needed to give me a second wind of energy, because I now no longer feel like I'm going to fall asleep every couple of pages, which is obviously brilliant when you're trying to do a 24-hour readathon. So I'm now about 200 pages into How Do You Like Me Now, which is just over halfway because I think the book has about 350 pages altogether, and I'm definitely enjoying it. I think obviously it's a lot easier to read now that I'm not falling asleep every couple of pages. But yeah, it's a really enjoyable read and I'm definitely finding it easy to get through, which is interesting because I feel like it's not necessarily a contemporary that I super relate to, because the main character is in her early 30s, so she's like a fair bit older than me, and I feel like some of the things that she's talking about are kind of like very specific to sort of entering that new like decade, so obviously I don't really necessarily relate to that. But then other elements of the book I feel like are kind of relatable to anyone who's like post high school age, because it's kind of talking about how different people who at one point in their life were all friends are kind of going down different paths and reaching different milestones at different times, and I feel like it kind of shows that separation of people, which I certainly noticed with people who I went to school with, because obviously up until the point where everyone leaves school you're all kind of on this same path because you're kind of constrained by the school system sort of taking you on a particular journey, and then once you leave, different people make different decisions and things can go very differently, which can then sort of affect how friendships develop. And I think that's something that can be definitely quite relatable to people no matter like what age they are after high school, so that's certainly an interesting element of it. And then another thing that I'm kind of enjoying is that it's kind of like, in my opinion anyway, a reverse romance story, because it's kind of like the relationship is a key part of this book, but it's kind of more about Tori, the main character, finding some independence and figuring out her own identity. So that is really interesting as well. But for now I'm just going to carry on reading until I literally can't stay awake anymore. So it's officially Saturday now. I think it's 12:30 in the morning, but I just finished up reading How Do You Like Me Now, and I really enjoyed this one. I've ended up giving it 4 stars because overall I found it to be a really fun and interesting read, and I really liked that overall theme of like kind of figuring out what to do. And although it's about people who are older than me, so I can't quite relate to it, I think it was a really interesting topic of kind of feeling like you've trapped yourself into a certain situation and can't try and change it because you're too old, and this is kind of about sort of like challenging that perception, which I did really enjoy. Now there were a couple of things that I wasn't as keen on. This book had a lot of sections featuring like text and social media, and I didn't always enjoy how that was used. The text parts were good and I feel like they fitted into the narrative quite well, but then the like social media bits I felt like kind of stuck out a little bit, and there were even some bits where it had like random pictures as if to show what people had posted on social media that I just didn't really like. So that's kind of like the main thing that I didn't enjoy about it, but overall really loved the book and it was a great read, and I'm glad that I finally picked up something by Holly Bourne. So yeah, this was a 4-star read and I'm super glad because it's just into Saturday and I finished my first read for the 24-hour readathon. So I'm now just about to get started on read number 2, because although it is probably nearly time to go to bed, I'm not feeling too tired at the moment. That could change at any minute because I've been on so many waves of like practically having to be like woken up by Jay because I've already fallen asleep, and then being like super alive and awake. So who knows what's going to happen in like 5 minutes. But the next book that I'm picking up is going to be The Flat Share by Beth O'Leary, which I'm really excited to read because this one has been on my shelves since August and I've heard only good things about this book, so I'm really looking forward to reading it. So I'm going to get started on that now. I'm not sure how far I'll get, but I do have myself like half a cup of tea left, so I'm going to make my way through this, do some reading and see how late I manage to stay up. So it's just after 1 and I'm going to call it quits for the evening because honestly if I try and stay up any later I'll probably like crash at about 10 o'clock tomorrow morning and I just don't have time for that. But I did manage to read about 55 pages of The Flat Share and so far I'm enjoying it. It is basically everything that I expected it would. Obviously when I was reading How Do You Like Me Now I didn't really know what I was going into because I hadn't really read much about the synopsis, but with this book I've heard a lot more about it, and I also feel like the title of the book gives a lot more away because it's basically about 2 people who are sharing a flat. It's a dual narrative book where we're seeing 2 perspectives. We've got Tiffy and Leon who are both sharing a flat, but it's kind of a unique flat share experience because they're not only just sharing the flat but they're also sharing the bed, because Tiffy works a like standard 9 to 5 job and she is desperate to have a cheap and affordable room in London because she's just broken up with her boyfriend and doesn't have anywhere else to stay. And then we've also got Leon, who is a nurse who works night shifts and then stays with his girlfriend on the weekend. So basically they're sharing the flat and sharing the bed, but they're never in the flat at the same time. So that's kind of where we're up to so far, but I have a feeling obviously that it's a book about the two of them, so they're going to have a relationship of some description that develops throughout the book. But for now we're just kind of getting introduced to them as characters. But so far sounds really interesting and I'm really enjoying it, particularly because I always love dual narrative books and I feel like this one in particular is quite a unique situation, so it should be quite fun to read. But for now I'm going to put it down and go to sleep because hopefully that will help me out for tomorrow and making sure that I actually get a lot of reading done. But I'm hoping to only just get like a few hours sleep and wake up still pretty early tomorrow so I can get some reading done straight away. Good morning guys, so it is now about 8 o'clock on Saturday morning and I've been reading since about 6:30 and I'm just about 160-ish pages through the flat share and I am loving this book. This was probably the most anticipated book on my TBR because, as I said yesterday, it's been on my shelves for months and I've been wanting to read it, so I'm so glad that I'm enjoying it. But I just think it's such an interesting concept because, as I mentioned, you've got like this dual perspective where we're getting Tiffy and Leon's chapters, but what's really interesting is that although they're sharing this flat, they don't actually meet up until like basically the point that I've just reached. So until now they're communicating only through like mostly letters and notes to each other and also just like texts and things. But I feel like that's kind of interesting, particularly obviously now in a world where a lot of people have online friends and things like that. It's kind of interesting how you can get to know someone so well without actually meeting them. But yeah, absolutely loving it. I feel like I'm so invested in this story and luckily I'm feeling a lot more awake than I was at like 1 o'clock last night, which is obviously great. So I'm just about to go and grab some breakfast and I'm not actually the best at multitasking, eating and reading at the same time. So I'm probably just going to watch some Vlogmas videos whilst I eat breakfast and then get back to reading straight after that. So we just had breakfast and now it is advent calendar time and I'm super happy because yesterday I actually somehow forgot to have my advent calendar and that means today I get to have double chocolate, which is always one of my favourite things about December because, you know, chocolate every day is great but double chocolate some days is even better. So I need to find days 6 and 7. Okay, day 6. One-handed advent calendar opening is a task in and of itself. Right, I'll get it out in a second, and then day 7 is there. Ooh. Okay. Got it. So basically we've got a dove, I think. Doesn't want to focus. Yeah, a dove and a stocking. So love advent calendar chocolate.
What you say?
So I love advent calendar chocolate.
Delicious, right? What shapes you get?
Dove and a stocking.
I got me a snowman and a tree. Look at that.
Snowman and a tree. Nice. So it's currently about 10:25. I've had a shower, gotten ready, and more interestingly, I finally finished up reading the flat share, which I loved. I absolutely cannot express how much I enjoyed this book. I had a feeling I was going to enjoy it because, as I said, I've only ever heard good things about it. But you know, there are some books that you just like enjoy and they're a fun read, but they're not like amazing, whereas this one was just incredible and I loved it so much. So it's probably no surprise that I've definitely given this one 5 stars. I just think it was such a fun and interesting concept with the sort of like dual narrative and these people kind of like meeting but not meeting in person and kind of getting to know each other in an alternative way, and I feel like it was the direct opposite of insta love, and I just loved it so much. Then there were also some, like, along with the more like fun romantic elements, there were like some more serious topics in the sense of like someone coming out of a toxic relationship and kind of learning to know when something was emotionally manipulative and abusive and that kind of thing, so that was super interesting as well. And I just think in general this was one of those books where obviously the like synopsis is that there's these two people who don't know each other but are sharing a flat and sharing a bed, and you can kind of gather, given the genre of the book, where it's going to go, so you're not like in for any major surprises, and yet still it's a super gripping read that I just found amazing and I loved it so much, so I'm super glad that I finally got around to reading this one. But I'm actually not picking up my next book of this 24-hour readathon just yet because I'm now heading out for coffee and Christmas donuts with Em, which is going to be so much fun, and I'm also borrowing my next read from Em, so I won't be able to start that until after I've met up with her in a little bit, but we're going to set off now and I cannot wait to get my hands on a Christmas donut.
Any ideas?
So it's now about 3:30, which means I've got just over 4 hours left until this readathon is finished. But it was so much fun meeting up with Em and getting festive donuts because they were so good. I was kind of gutted because I had wanted to get the chocolate orange one, but they didn't have that in, so I ended up getting the Irish Boston cream, which basically tasted like a caramel vegan custard donut with like a chocolate top on, and it was really nice, so that was amazing. Although I did nearly fall off the bench whilst I was eating it, which would have just been typical of me because I'm so clumsy, but luckily I managed to save it and didn't draw too much attention to myself, so that was good. And then yeah, me and Jay have just been to the shops and picked up some food for dinner, but now I'm back so I can get started on book number 3, which I borrowed from Em. She brought it when we went for coffee, so I'm going to be starting The Places I've Cried in Public by Holly Bawn, and you can tell this is Em's copy because it's all tabbed up because it's one of her faves, so I'm really excited to get started on this one and see how different it is, because obviously I read Holly Bawn's adult book earlier as my first book for this readathon, and then this is one of her YA ones, so I'm interested to see how the like writing style differs between her adult and YA style. So I am actually starting to feel a little bit tired now. I think the fact that I only had like 5 hours sleep is starting to hit me, so I'm going to take a leaf from last night's Kira's book and actually make a hot chocolate because that seemed to perk me up last night, so I'm hoping it'll do the same now. So it's now just before 5 o'clock, and unfortunately that hot chocolate had the opposite effect of last night's hot chocolate, and I actually ended up falling asleep on the sofa, and Jay did as well, so basically we're both just useless. However, I've got about 3 hours left until the readathon is over, and I'm currently about 100 pages into The Places I've Cried in Public, and so far I'm finding this to be quite an interesting book because it basically is a like retrospective book where we're following our protagonist Emily as she reflects on what we assume is like a recently ended relationship, and the book kind of has two fonts, and so you know that one font is the present day where she's reflecting on it, and then the other font is kind of like the flashbacks to the relationship, and in particular all the times when things went wrong, and you kind of follow her along with the like theme of looking at all the places that the relationship made her cry, basically. So it's interesting because it's got that kind of like mixture of past and present, so even though you're looking at the past and seeing it how she might have seen it at the time, you also know that you can see it through a different lens because you can see maybe the negatives more easily and you know where it's going, so you're not having that same kind of like romantic guise that you might get from a typical YA romance. And this book, I can't remember what it says on the first page. Oh yeah, it says It looked like love, it felt like love, but this isn't a love story, so that's quite a good sort of way to summarise like how this book is set out. But yeah, really enjoying it. I'm having to use a bookmark for this one, which I never normally do because I've borrowed this one from Em and she looks after her books a lot more carefully than I do. Not that I don't look after my books, but I don't mind like folding the pages and everything like that, whereas Em does, so I'm having to be very conscious to make sure that I only use the bookmark and don't ruin it because I don't want to spoil her book basically. But yeah, enjoying it so far, and I'm luckily feeling a little bit more awake now, so hopefully I can power through and get this all read. So time is literally flying this evening. I feel like last night felt like it lasted for ages, and now time is just like going so quickly. It's now 6:30, which means there's only an hour and a half left of the readathon, but I've just reached page 305 of The Places I've Cried in Public, which means I've only got about 50 pages left to go, which hopefully means I can definitely finish it before 8 o'clock, which is obviously my main goal for the rest of the evening. But I am definitely enjoying this book because it is a really interesting story. It deals with like the concept of coming to terms with the fact that you've been in like a toxic relationship, which I think is interesting, particularly because that was also one of the main themes of How Do You Like Me Now, which is obviously also by Holly Vaughan. And I feel like although one was an adult book and this one is a YA book, and they are definitely about different things in the sense that this one definitely focuses on a more abusive toxic relationship, whereas the one in How Do You Like Me Now is kind of more just about people who have like grown apart and become incompatible. There's definitely a lot of similarities in how the two protagonists, Tori and Amelie, sort of are unable to see the reality of what's going on in front of them. So I think that's really interesting that there's still those similarities, even though they are definitely aimed at different demographics. But for now, it's dinner time, so I'm going to go make some pizza and curly fries, and I'll probably do some reading whilst they cook, and then carry on and hopefully finish it after I've finished up with dinner. So it is currently 7:47, which means that I've just finished up The Places I've Cried in Public with 13 minutes to spare until the end of this readathon, and that also means that in the past 24 hours for this Smash Your TBR readathon, I've read a total of 1,112 pages, which in my opinion has definitely helped me to smash my end of year TBR, and has taken me a lot closer to reaching my end of year reading goal because I now only need to read 7 more books, I think, for the rest of December, which is a lot more achievable now that I've ticked off 3 books in only 24 hours. So I'm super happy with that, and yeah, I'm just really glad to have done this readathon, especially along with Em and everyone else that's taken part as well. But moving back onto my thoughts for The Places I've Cried in Public, I think similarly to How Do You Like Me Now, I'm going to give this one 4 stars because it was a really enjoyable read, and for the most part I feel like this did a great job of dealing with an important and quite like dark subject about like a quite sort of traumatic abusive relationship. My main criticism of this book would be that I found the relationship to be a bit insta-lovey, like it just kind of felt very sudden, and I feel like although the rest of the book, which dealt with the sort of like I guess aftermath of the relationship, was really well done, I think it just would have come across as even more impactful if we'd have gotten a little bit more development of the relationship at the beginning and it didn't just like happen, because it seems like Amelie kind of falls into this new relationship and all of a sudden this person who she barely knows is her everything, which I just feel like is kind of unrealistic. Overall, I feel like I would have related to Amelie as like a protagonist more so than Tori from How Do You Like Me Now, just because probably she's like slightly more similar to me in age and that kind of thing. But overall, really enjoyed both books, and I just noticed when I was checking all of my page counts in the back of How Do You Like Me Now, it says that Holly Vaughan has got a new adult book coming out in 2020, so I'm really excited to read that one as well. But yeah, I'm super happy with the books that I picked up. I think it's probably obvious that my favourite one was The Flat Share because that was just incredible, but to say that I've read 2 4-stars and 1 5-star read in just like one day is pretty great because that means I enjoyed all of them quite a lot. So although technically I've still got a few minutes left of this readathon before we officially hit 8 o'clock, I don't think there's much point in picking up any more books just yet, but I am super happy with the 3 books that I managed to finish, especially because I enjoyed all of them so much. So if you've actually read any of these books, I'd love to hear your thoughts down in the comments below, because I just love talking about books that I love. And yeah, if you've read them, let me know what you thought, because I'd love to hear if you have any similar thoughts or which one you liked the best out of them, if you happen to have read all of them like me as well. Also, I know from Twitter and Instagram that a few people did actually take part in this 24-hour readathon along with me and Em, so if you were one of those people, let me know how it went for you down below, because honestly it was so amazing that people actually wanted to take part, and it was just so much fun to chat with people throughout the day and just have people take part along with me and Em. So yeah, let me know how that went for you as well, and if you've got any more reading goals for the end of the year that you'd like to tick off. Like, I have got like 7 more books, but I'm hoping to read even more than that, so who knows, we might even get another 24-hour readathon in before December ends. But yeah, I know that me and Em both had a really great time doing this 24-hour readathon. It was so much fun, and I hope you've enjoyed hearing all of my thoughts on these 3 books, because I enjoyed them all so much. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.